In the last video, I looked at the configuration screen for our poker game. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the actual play of the poker game itself. Now, if you've ever played online poker before, you're already going to be familiar with most of the buttons on the screen. It looks just like a poker game looks on most online poker sites. But there's going to be a few additional buttons that you will not be familiar with. For example, there's an advice button to get advice while you play. There's an odds button. There's a retry button if you decide you don't like the way a hand went down, you want to play the hand over again. So let's take a look at all the options in our poker game. Okay, so we configured all the options we wanted, we hit the submit button, and now that takes us to the poker game here, which as you can see looks very much like a poker game you're used to at any other online poker site you've ever played at. The difference here, of course, is you're playing against bots, virtual opponents, and not real human opponents. You've been dealt 4 random cards unless you configured the software to deal you something other than random cards on the last screen. And all your opponents have been dealt random cards as well. I bring that up because I have gotten some emails on my Hold'em site, advancedpokertraining.com. Hey, are you sure you aren't setting up the deck in some way? Are the bots cheating? I promise you, we use the same random number generator that a lot of the online poker sites use. All the cards are always dealt totally randomly. So if you've gotten a lot of coolers in one session, it's just a run of bad luck. And like those of you that have played poker for long enough know that happens sometimes. But there is no, the bots are not cheating. They're not peeking at your cards at all. And their hands have been totally randomly dealt as well. Let's go around the screen here. Up at the top left, we've got the chips options button, and that'll just take you back to that config screen again if you want to change any of those options during the middle of a session. Over here on the right, you've got a speed control. This will speed up or slow down how fast the bots act, depending on your personal preference there. Below that, you can turn the sounds on and off. And this quit and save button, you can hit that when you're finished playing a session. But I want to point out that even if you were to close your browser window and you forgot to hit the quit and save button, every hand you play is still going to be saved. So don't worry about if you accidentally shut off your computer without hitting the quit and save button. Your hands are going to be saved anyway. But it is just a clean way to close out your session when you're finished playing. Now, as you look around the table here, you'll notice you can click on your opponent's cards if you want to peek at your opponent's cards. Obviously, use that option sparingly. You're not going to learn anything if you're always peeking at your opponent's cards, but sometimes later in the hand you want to test your read, see if you were really on track with your read on a certain opponent, so maybe you want to use it for that. A better option might be if you don't want to peek at your opponent's cards during the hand, but you'd like to see your opponent's cards after the hand, is to use this peek at end button down here. So that button there will just show everyone's hand and will show what all the board cards would have been at the end of the hand if you'd like to see them. One other thing about your opponents, you also can hover over any opponent and you'll see a description of their playing style and a little bit about them. I do want to point out this zip to end button here. Now this is one of the most important features on OPT. You'll notice this box is checked. As long as that box is checked, whenever you fold, you're instantly dealt another hand. That's so important because it lets you train so much faster than you'd be able to. Let's say when you play live PLO at a card room, you get, maybe 30 hands an hour or something like that. In this game here, not only do you not have to wait for slow opponents, like you would in a card room or in an online game, but as soon as you fold, it takes you right into the next hand. So you can play, we say that you can play 10 times faster on OPT, and I really believe that's true. I think you get in about 10 times as many hands than you would in an hour of live play. Moving on over to the bottom right here, we've got buttons that, the fold button, check, raise button. I mean, those are the, typical buttons you'd expect. You've got a little slider here for how much you want to bet. But you'll notice, of course, there's a limit to how much you can bet because this is Pot-Limit Omaha and not no limit. So you cannot just bet your entire stack at any given time. And there's little buttons up here. You can see these if you want to bet a third of the pot, half the pot, 2/3 of the pot, 3/4 of the pot, or the full size of the pot, which is the maximum. So these buttons are good here. Sometimes if you're kind of new to the game, you may have trouble actually computing how much a pot size bet is. So here's a good way to practice it. You could try to first figure it out on your own and then press the pot button here, and it'll actually show you how much was a pot size bet at this point in the hand. The odds button, when you're pre-flop, is going to show you the current pot odds you're being offered. And once you go to the flop, as I'll do here, the odds button will also show you your odds of improving. So your odds of getting a flush or a straight or whatever on the next card. So that's very useful, again, for beginners who are still trying to get a grasp on what their odds are to improve to various types of hands. Finally, here we've got this advice button. You can click this advice button at any time, and the advisor will tell you what action they recommend and why they recommend it. And I'm going to go over all of the things that come along with the advice button in another video, because as you can see here, there's a show range button that comes up as well. And when you click on that, you'll be able to look at the entire range of hands we think your opponent could be holding or that you could be holding at this point in the hand. And that's a much more advanced topic. So just wanted to quickly touch on that you can look at your range and your opponent's range. The only time you will not be able to get advice anymore is when you have not played the hand the way the advisor would have wanted you to play it. So let's say someone raises and you just call pre-flop, but the advisor would have re-raised pre-flop. After that point, you won't be able to get advice anymore. And that's just because of the way the advisor works in keeping track of what range of hands you're holding. And it no longer knows what range of hands you're holding anymore when you haven't followed its advice on any given street. Okay, so there's a couple more options I haven't covered here yet. Let's go on to the next hand, and you'll notice some new buttons appear. One says Retry Previous Hand. That is a super useful feature here. If you don't like the way you played the last hand, you can click this button and you can retry that exact same hand against the same opponents to try out a different strategy. Maybe you only called on the flop and you wish you had raised or check raised or something. You want to see how the bots react to that. You want to see what kind of strategy works best. You can retry a hand over and over again. This will not affect your statistics because when you retry the hand, it's not saved to your database anymore. Only the first time you play the hand is actually saved to your database. The other new button here is this Tag Previous Hand button. Now, a tag is nothing but a category. This lets you put the last hand you played into some kind of category. Suppose you want to categorize hands that you wish you had played differently, hands you want to show to a friend or a coach, hands you really played well that you're proud of that you want to share with someone. You can click this Tag Previous Hand button. I'll show you how it works. You can just enter a name. Again, a tag is a category. Enter whatever name you want. I could put hands I misplayed. And then down here you can enter any notes. This is a free form box. Enter all kinds of notes in here if you want to say exactly what went wrong on the hand or why you're categorizing it this. All these notes and the tags will show up later in your database, so you can easily find hands that you tagged in a certain way, and you'll be able to read your notes later when you go to look over these hands later. So I think that's about it. I think we've covered all the options on the screen, and I will talk to you more in our next video.